Welcome back to JBSports. I'm your host, John Brain, with my guest.
Jonah Mrykalo, founder of Ridin The Shipp.
Yes, and today we are doing an important episode because we will be doing a live stream next week for the draft. So we want to get a mock draft out there because that just makes sense.
Absolutely.
So we're going to do all teams. We're not going to do any just sim draft because we did one and they were terrible.
Yeah, pretty bad.
I did one yesterday and it had Cam Ward falling to the Panthers. So we're gonna do it
Great start.
one by one, and let's have fun with it. Me and you have talked extensively about this first pick, and we've had this decided for a while.
Yep.
So the Titans are a team who, as we said on a radio show, have had no luck with the quarterbacks.
Preach.
In many picks in recent
I
years.
listened to them off quite a bit.
Yeah, so of course you have Malik Willis, who didn't work out but worked out for the Packers. So you have quarterbacks that are working out on different teams but not yours. Will Levis, who of course famously got memed. So it's not looking too good for them. And they need other positions, but I think quarterback's the number one. And Cam Ward, actually, today, I was watching some clips of him on Fortnite, and you were saying like the number that A.J. Brown is like, he's a solid receiver, but he's no Calvin Ridley. Or
the running back,
he said Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears were the best ones in the league. So you kind of know that he's talked to them and they say, hey, with the number one pick, we're probably going to choose you. So it only makes sense for us to choose him number one to the Titans. Number two, this is where it starts getting actually kind of interesting.
Yeah, I feel like we have three different players who can go here. Abdul Carter, the stud defensive end from Penn State. Travis Hunter, the hybrid out of Colorado, won the Heisman Trophy. And they might go quarterback, Shedeur Sanders.
Yeah.
Something that I don't think is going to happen. I think if they're going to take a quarterback, which I think they will, that's going to come possibly in the second round.
Yes.
Maybe they'll take Jalen Milroe. Maybe they'll trade up late in the first round for Jackson Dart, the quarterback out of Ole Miss, who could go maybe as high as 9. You'd have quite the reaction if that happens. But yeah, either way. And they could also trade down as well. I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, I don't personally think they're going to trade down.
So I think we're in agreement, though, that Cleveland is going to select Travis Hunter out of Colorado.
Yeah.
I think, I said this on my podcast last week or 2 weeks ago with my mock draft. I thought it was going to be Abdul Carter. I thought pairing him with Myles Garrett would make a lot of sense. And it definitely would. They could still go that route. Travis Hunter would be, I think, an amazing selection there. The only issue I have is the quarterback situation. Who's going to be throwing them the ball? Because Cleveland, they're not going to be a good team next year. So maybe they'll go out and get one of those quarterbacks in the draft, like I said. Maybe they'll go out and I don't think they're going to trade for Kirk Cousins anymore since they acquired Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett. So.
I think their dream scenario is pick Travis Hunter here and then just trade one spot up with the Eagles to get Dart at like 32.
Or even
Milroe. I think they'll pick Dart if he's there. But we've talked extensively. And we'll get into Dart a little bit later, but we will go Travis Hunter with this pick. Next pick, this one we've talked a lot too.
Big wild card
because the Giants, they have some good players.
Yeah.
Mostly Malik Neighbor. That's really the one to write home about. But they need help basically everywhere.
Yep.
But at their position, Shedeur is a good quarterback. He's way more high on Shedeur than I am. I think they do need a quarterback, but it would be better to wait a year or two because he's a future quarterback, but he's not one of the premier future quarterbacks. And there's a premier future player there with Abdul Carter, which their D-line could use some work too. They have some players that might leave soon, and there's some players that are getting older.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I agree. I think Abdul Carter is going to be the selection. It could still be Shedeur Sanders. I feel like we've been going back and forth on that. There's been a lot of hot rumors about this recently. He did have a private workout, I believe, the other day. So that could be an option. I think it is going to be Carter, though. It makes a lot of sense. He's the best player left on the board for me, and I think for you as well.
Yeah.
Our top-rated prospect in this draft. So, again, could go either way. And you mentioned the Giants could look to get a quarterback either a year or two from now, maybe even this year. We talked about Cleveland trading up in the first round for Dart or someone like that.
Yeah.
I think the Giants could do the exact same thing. They have Cleveland has the first pick in the second round. I think the Giants have the second pick in the second round. So makes a lot of sense going up in the first round if they really love one of these quarterbacks. But Shedeur, it could happen. I would not be surprised. But I think right now I am leaning towards Abdul Carter there.
And the thing about Abdul Carter is he is just a monster on that field. He is a presence. He's like a Micah Parsons, where just hearing his name, it's going to be a rough game for the quarterback. Like as a Commanders fan, Jaden Daniels, of course. Anytime I hear Cowboys, first person I think of is Parsons, and like he's gonna have at least 2 sacks in the first half.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly what happened both games. So he's one of those people that has that name presence, like a Garrett, like a Watt. So he's a great pick for the Giants. Next one though,
Really interesting.
really interesting because again, they're a team where they had a very good few additions in the offseason.
They were active.
But some of the additions were just placement picks, like offensive line. They had people that'll help them in a year or two. And defense also. They had people who will help them for this year, next year. But the future-wise, it's not fully built there. Yeah. I think, of course, Drake May.
Absolutely.
Amazing quarterback. He's great. Wide receiver, there's not a wide receiver you can take.
Yeah, there. Value not there for wide receiver. And for New England, if this happens, this is, I don't want to say the worst case scenario because they have a lot of needs they can fill with this roster, even though, as we touched on, very active in free agency. They would love, though, for Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter to be there.
Yeah.
Since they are, they should 100% look to get out of the pick. The problem is, who's going to trade up with them? I mean, could it be New Orleans at 9, looking to go up from 9 to 4 for Shedeur Sanders? While I think if he does fall to 9, they should take him. I do not love a trade-up scenario there. No. I think you might be giving up your first-round pick next year to a couple other assets. I don't love that. So for New England, I think they really want to get out of the pick, but if they're forced to stay here, which I think that's going to have to be the case, I think they're going to take Will Campbell, the left tackle stud, out of LSU. Someone who I'm not as high on as other people. He's actually my number 2 tackle in the draft. I'll get to the number 1 tackle in a little bit.
Yeah,
but he fits. He fits what Mike Vrabel and New England wants to do. They need offensive line protection for Drake May. Obviously, you want to get him some weapons. They did acquire and sign Stephon Diggs in the offseason. We'll see how the knee recovery turns out for him. But I think it makes a lot of sense. Vrabel it fits perfectly with what they want to do. They should 100% look to trade back. But again, if they're forced to sit here, I'd like Will Campbell.
Yeah. And OT, Drake May, he can run out of the pocket, and he's a very good mover. But once you have an established team and a good team, usually you want a player that doesn't have to run out of the pocket so they don't get hurt. So I do think Will Campbell is the pick for them. And I think Will Campbell, very good.
The arm length.
The arm length is what you have a question mark about. But through college, it didn't affect him too much. But once you go to the NFL level, that's going to be a little more of a question mark. So you're going to have to see if he can just move faster than them. That's really what's going to be his saving grace when he gets drafted. Next, the Jacksonville Jaguars.
I think we know where we're going with this.
We haven't had a single. The only other time we haven't picked this guy is if there's a scenario where Travis Hunter falls, but he's not getting past. He's not getting past any. Really, 3 or 4.
Yeah,
he's not going to get past there.
2.
2, yeah. So he wouldn't get past him. So we know they need defense.
Absolutely.
The quarterback is not a full issue yet. Right. You still have some question marks about him, but about Trevor Lawrence, of course. But you have a quarterback who's sustainable, wide receivers that aren't completely terrible.
They hit on Brian Thomas.
Brian Thomas is a big hit. He's going to be one of the best in the league, I think, this year. So you have some good pieces on offense, and you have a good running back, but defense is where you need help with. So we both agree.
Mason
Graham is definitely the pick.
Great run stopper.
Great run, like you said, great run stopper, which is another need in the NFL just because running backs are starting to become a thing again, especially with Saquon. Like the Commanders, we went out in the draft specifically in free agency, specifically just to get run stoppers because Saquon destroyed us every game. And that's really it.
And if you're Jacksonville, you're playing in a division with Jonathan Taylor, Joe Mixon, both in the backfield in that division. Gotta stop the run there.
Yeah, it's an insane division for running back, so that just makes sense. Next team, which again for the last few weeks we haven't really changed our mind too much, which you could have some other choices, but they address their quarterback situation. They have a okay group of wide receivers, but really Brock Bowers is your main target.
They hit on that pick.
He's which was not a weird pick, but kind of surprising. It was a fun pick for them, and it really worked out because he was the best tight end in football last year, in my opinion. But now they have Pete Carroll as their head coach, and he likes a specific type of running back.
He does.
And there's one running back that I think fits that bill pretty perfectly. One of the best running back prospects from college in a very long time, Ashton Jeanty, to the Raiders, and it just fits there. He's a very dynamic, I think, running back, but he can also kind of get through some tackles. You saw in college, Penn State was a rough game, but that's because 5 people on the line. So give him a NFL line, and he could probably do better.
Yeah, and Pete Carroll, he loves to run the football, as we all know. He went back-to-back drafts not that long ago.
Yeah.
We took a running back in the second round, Kenneth Walker, 2022 second round, and then Zach Charbonnet the next year in the second round. So that's his philosophy. They want to run the football, take care of Geno Smith, your new quarterback, who he knows very well, a great relationship in Seattle. Makes a lot of sense. I know folks taking a running back might be a little too high, but at the end of the day, look what just happened last year. Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry. 2 years ago with the draft with Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, two guys that running backs who went in the top 12. So the running back position, it might be back a little bit. And this pick would actually make a lot of sense for the Raiders.
I'm just scared of what the money might turn out soon.
Yeah.
You got every money situation going up just because the NFL's getting more money.
Yeah.
So teams are. Next pick, the New York Jets. Again, a team that needs a lot of help, but there's another team where we've literally only talked about one person going there, really.
They have options.
They have options, but we've really decided on one. Yeah. And you love him. I love him. I think he's the best tackle in the draft.
Armand Membu, tackle from Missouri. Someone who didn't even give up a sack last year, just turned 21. I love his upside. The Jets, they took Olu Fashanu with the 11th pick last year to play tackle in the first round. They could go Tyler Warren here. I think that's a pick that would make some sense. Either way, I think you got to do everything possible to help Justin Fields, the quarterback you acquired in the offseason. Yes, you could go defense with maybe a guy like Will Johnson, defensive back out of Michigan, since Aaron Glenn is the new head coach, defensive-minded guy. So could go in that route, but I think they're going to wait a little bit down the line. But still, I think getting Membu here at 7, a pick that makes a lot of sense. He fits what they want to do with their offensive line. 2 years in a row going with the offensive line, and I think it'd be a great selection there.
And going back to your Justin Fields take, I agree. You saw last year in Pittsburgh when he actually had an offensive line, it looked a little better. Of course, he still got to work on the throwing a little bit, and that's the one concern we had. Like we talk about, we like Justin Fields a lot. We think he can be a great player. He has a line where he can actually throw behind. I think last year, if they would have kept him starting, he would have been astronomically better by the end of the year. So give him a line that can protect him, and you might see some big change for him. Next, Carolina Panthers. This is where we've had a little bit of discussion about because in your mock draft, check it out. I'll put it in the description. You had Jalen Walker, and a lot of times I said T-Mac for different reasons. Jalen Walker, he does have upside, and the reason he has such potential is he can be good in 2 different positions. You just have to crack the code on which one, which personally I think linebacker.
Yeah, that's why I said that in my episode as well. Linebacker, defensive end, that's what he was at Georgia. I think, and I had that conversation with myself, we had it in our episode the other day. I think he's going to be a linebacker, and he had 6.5 sacks last year. And by the way, turn on to Texas State week 8 in Austin. 3 sacks, he lit it up. Definitely showed why I think he should be a top 10 pick in this draft. Carolina, they got to go defense. 100%. I know we touched on Tedero McMillan. Makes a lot of sense there. Got to get weapons for Bryce Young. They do not have the original 2nd-round pick. They traded 2 years ago in the Bryce Young draft trade with Chicago.
Which is still kind of up in the air because Bryce Young has turned around. But right now it looks like it.
But they do have another 2nd-round pick. They got it in the Brain Fist trade last year. It's, I believe, 57th overall. So they could go look to get a wide receiver down the line. There's a lot of depth in this draft. Maybe they look at Jane Higgins, for example, out of Iowa State. That would make
That's a good addition.
Yeah, so could go either way.
It's a deeper wide receiver class, but I think most of these kind of positions, it's when you get deeper, they're still good, but I think there's just a massive drop off from the first 2, and then there's which last year you can make an example with quarterback. It was pretty solid, and then it had that drop off. Which quarterbacks this year, we've talked about that before. But
did we agree on a pick yet? I don't think we did.
I think we will go Jalen Walker. Okay. I think that just makes sense because they're a team that's not going to be good for us, so they can't afford a kind of a project pick because they know it's
players like Jalen Walker are not going to be there at 57 for Carolina. No. Defensively.
This one though, the next pick, the New Orleans Saints. This is one that's been very interesting. Because a lot has come out recently, mostly the Derek Carr news where he might already be out for season. Because of a shoulder injury.
Out of New Orleans.
Yeah, it might be out of New Orleans. And the one problem is we made a joke yesterday about the Saints where their owners can't manage their SAP calories. So how are they supposed to draft right? Which is why we made a joke that they're going to accidentally take Jackson Dart instead of Shedeur, which Shedeur is still here, and Shedeur is their pick because they need a quarterback. They need a lot of things, but quarterback is something they should address now because I don't think any of the quarterbacks right now are going to fill that role. Spencer Rattler fun guy, fun to watch, but he's not a starting quarterback.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you look at Shedeur Sanders, someone who I like a lot, high football IQ, processes information, completed 74% of his passes last year, 37 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. Someone who, for a while, I actually had as my number one quarterback in the draft over Cam Ward. But towards the end, he had that game against BYU, the bowl game, and there was a lot of bad tape. He got blown out by a very good BYU team, by the way.
Yeah.
Had 2 interceptions. It just, didn't like what I saw. And then for Cam Ward, on the other hand, someone who did not have to play in the bowl game against Iowa State. A lot of people were critical that he didn't play the second half. I was totally fine with that. He played a great game. He broke the record for the most passing touchdowns by a quarterback in college football history. So I applaud him for playing in that game, and the difference there. One quarterback played really well against a very good Big 12 team, and the other really struggled against a very good Big 12 team. So I think Shedeur, he should be a top 10 pick. I think for New Orleans, if they get him at 9, I feel like it's the right range for Shedeur, by the way, because there's been talks about him going 2 or 3, which I understand, but that might be a little too high. And then there's some mocks who have him going all the way down to 21 at Pittsburgh, which I think the Steelers would love that selection.
Oh, yeah.
Reports that Mike Tomlin really liked him. So
don't worry, my friend. He's praying that he falls that far. And I'm like, dude, he's not getting past 9.
But getting him at 9, though, that's the right range for him, right?
That's a good range, yeah.
Saints, they need a franchise quarterback. They've been looking for that quarterback of the future since Drew Brees. They could go Jackson Dart even with Shedeur on the board. We're going to get a great reaction from that. But
that's going to be rough on the stream if that happens. But
I like the Shedeur pick here.
Bears, this is one where we've actually had a lot of discussion about top 10. One thing I see a lot is the running back situation, because Swift and their new head coach, Ben Johnson, haven't got along in the past, and their team was better than what the Bears are now. It's a good Lions team, mostly good. I mean, they had some good pieces, good offensive line, and it didn't work out. Those 2 did not click. So how is it going to do better if they go to a worse team with a worse offensive line? So I personally have mocked a lot Omarion Hampton.
I like that pick.
Which is, it could be kind of a reach, but he's a very good running back. And he's not going to fall far in the first round. I think he's definitely like late first round. So you could go line here to keep beefing it up. But personally, I would go Omarion.
Yeah, I agree. I had Hampton going 20th to Denver in my mock draft. I think he's going to go a lot higher than that. Dallas at 12, that's a pick that would make a lot of sense. But Chicago getting him at 10. The Ben Johnson, DeAndre Swift dynamic, as we touched on. I don't think that's really going to work out. Swift has 2 years left on his deal. Hampton, someone who reminds me a lot of DeMarco Murray, actually. That's my comp for him. Tough runner. Really fits what they do. Very productive the last 2 years. And, Chicago, this is another one. Like taking a running back in the top 10, 2 running backs in the top 10, that'd be very interesting. But again, I touched on the running back position. It's trending upward, and I think that would be a nice selection there for Chicago.
And Saquon really has been the catalyst to help their position out. And now that we're out of the top 10, we start to go to some picks that you can play around with. San Francisco, a team that lost a lot. Gained some, but lost way more than they gained. And last year was terrible for them. They really struggled. A lot of injuries. But some key pieces they lost this year was Greenlaw, Olafungu, is that how you say his name?
Hufanga,
yeah. And Deebo Samuel went to the Commanders, so they got a lot of spots they need to fill. Also, Charvarius Ward they lost, so you can see them going corner. They can go linebacker. They can go safety, but I think mostly they're looking at Will Johnson.
That's why I was
or a linebacker. But if Will Johnson's there, you take it.
Yeah, I agree with that pick. Yeah,
Will Johnson, he. Not many question marks, maybe just a little bit about him, but he's a very
had a turf toe injury, missed the last 6 games of the regular season. But someone who was he had a great, really good 2024 at Michigan, a down year for the Wolverines, but he had 2 pick sixes, looked very good. And I think if Jalen Walker does fall to 11, I think that's going to be the pick, even with Will on the board. At the end of the day, Jalen, I think should be a top 10 pick. You get Will here. Fits in need at corner. Again, they lost a lot, but I mean, they could look to go Kelvin Banks. I had that in my mock draft. It makes some sense. Really need to protect Brock Purdy. It looks like he's going to be, once they get that contract situation straight now, he'll be the franchise guy. Don't pay him like $50+ million though.
It's a Baker Mayfield type.
I like Brock Purdy a lot, but not for that price.
I think he's a Baker Mayfield. Maybe I don't know.
Baker, Sam.
I think he's on Baker level. But
you predicted that.
Yeah. Next one, I'll let you take most of the reins here because it is your team, the Dallas Cowboys. What?
No, the floor's mine. There we go.
Yeah,
all right,
so yours.
The Dallas Cowboys picking 12th overall. I said this in our episode last week. Out of the 16 teams in the NFC, I have them at 13th roster-wise. I think they just have so many needs. The number one thing I want them to do, Jonathan, is trade out of the pick.
You want
that has been rumored a little bit. They're not going to trade up. They're not going to do anything crazy like that. I think here they have some options. I think they can look at Tyrone McMillan. They can go defense, of course. They can look at defensive back like Jahdae Barron. Trayvon Diggs, he's had some injury issues the last couple of years.
A lot,
yeah. His career in Dallas, I hate that.
It's starting to set.
Yeah, that's
starting to set away.
Yeah, that's a tough one there. But they don't have. Yeah, and Omarion Hampton, if he is there, I think definitely, as I touched on, a pick that would make a lot of sense for the Cowboys. They need a true running back one. They could look at wide receiver. I mentioned they don't have a true wide receiver two next to CeeDee Lamb. Two options here. I think it would either be Tyrone McMillan, the stud wide receiver out of Arizona, or Matthew Golden, the wide receiver out of Texas, who's been rising up draft boards recently.
Yeah.
I'm not as high on Golden as I am other people. Like, I think he's wide receiver 2 in this draft. Now, I think he's a better complement next to CeeDee Lamb, but for me, I'm going with my number one wide receiver in the draft, who I hope does not fall that far. And I'm going to go with the guy I had in my mock draft last week, Tyrone McMillan, out of Arizona, a jump ball stud. This is someone who has been, and the reason why I think he's been dropping recently, it's the route running. That's a big question to a lot of teams. But at the end of the day, I think he's the best wide receiver in the draft. Even though Arizona was a 4-8 team last year, this guy was someone who jumped off the screen. I think it'd be a great selection for Dallas. Someone who, not that long ago, we were talking about maybe 6 to the Raiders, Carolina at 8. I mean, that could still happen. Don't get me wrong, but I feel like this is the right range for him. Not too high, not too low.
Anytime I hear a mock draft in his name, though, I think of the one where he went
31.
I'm like, there's no way. There's actually no way. Next pick, Miami Dolphins.
A lot of disruption there right now.
Yeah. I honestly always think they should go O-line because of the injuries that you've seen Tua get. Safety's an option because they lost Holland, which was a big loss. I think Holland, some question marks, but he's very good. Defense, they need a lot too. There's a lot of these teams that need a lot.
The board shapes out pretty well for them.
It does. They have Kelvin Banks there. They're not going to take Warren. I think Banks would be a good pick there.
Yeah, I feel like if they're going to go offensive line, that's the pick right there. I think 13 would make a lot of sense for the Miami Dolphins. As we mentioned with Tua, has had some injury issues. There's been a lot of talk about maybe him retiring last year after the Buffalo game in week 2. So
I thought he might retire.
Yeah, it was possible, even with the long-term.
Because that one was just it was bad.
Yeah, so I think they can go that route. They do need they do need help, however, on the back end. Jalen Ramsey, who they would have just signed a year ago.
That's true. They could go that section, but
they're going to move on from Jalen. But
Jade's a pick there.
Jade's a pick. Malachi Starks, the stud defensive back out of Georgia, that would make a lot of sense. But I think we touched on with Tua, the health concerns. Big question mark. Miami, they got to get better on defense. But with Kelvin, who I think is the number 3 offense lineman in the draft, some people might even look at him as a guard. There's been a lot of questions about that.
Which they need.
Yeah, they need help on the offensive line. So I like Kelvin Banks.
I like Kelvin Banks there too. Just offensive line. They need a lot of help, but Tua should be your number 1 priority because you have him for the money you have him. You gotta protect him.
Absolutely.
Because 1 or 2 more concussions, might be one where they kind of force him to retire for his own good. Next one.
I think it's a no-brainer.
No-brainer.
Tyler Warren.
Tyler Warren. You have Mo Alley-Cox, who he's okay, but he's no Tyler Warren. Tyler Warren is a different type of prospect.
Absolutely.
This new few classes of tight ends are reshaping it. Like you had George Kittle, you had everyone, but
Bowers last year.
Yeah, Bowers last year. So it's a new legends of tight ends.
Best player available, fits a need at tight end for the Colts. You got to get, whether it's going to be Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones, a weapon. This pick, I think, makes a lot of sense. And he could go. This is a guy who could go as high as 7th, as I touched on the Jets.
We've talked about him.
7 to 14 is going to be his range. So if you're a team picking in the 20s, folks, he's not going to be there.
No. Maybe you can get Loveland. That's maybe
that'd be a good pick.
That'd be okay. But you're not getting Warren. Next one.
This is a no-brainer for me.
This is one of his favorite prospects in the draft. We've talked. Okay, we always say they need to go defensive line. We've never went away from that. We've talked about different prospects depending on who's there, but we've never strayed away from D-line.
I've been saying that for years.
Yeah.
Got to take a defensive lineman.
Yeah. Mike Green out of Marshall, very good player. What was it, 17 sacks?
17 sacks. Led the country last year.
He was insane.
Yeah, and folks, I know he's a group of 5 player, stuff like that. But just go watch his tape against Virginia Tech and Ohio State. Weeks 2 and 3 back to back were very impressive. Someone, energy guy, high motor.
Mm-hmm.
There are some character concerns, which we're not going to talk about here.
We won't.
You can just go look up online and stuff like that.
We won't worry.
He might fall. He
could.
It would be a luxury pick, I think, for some teams who could take a shot on this guy. Someone who I think could go as high as 8 to the Carolina Panthers. We touched about their defensive needs. And I mentioned he also could fall pretty far. He could fall to Washington at 29, for example.
There's a chance, but
I don't either. But so like right in the middle, this is the right range.
Yeah, I think
so great.
I think 15 is literally the perfect spot. I think that's literally his range.
Yeah, one of my favorite players in the draft. I wanted to take Dallas Turner last year, 8th overall. Ironically, they were the same number 15. They'd be taking him at number 15. So
next one.
But before we move on, if they don't take a defensive player, I'm walking off the set. I'll be back, but I do want to point that out.
He'll take a quick 5-minute break. This one, though,
might be longer.
Yeah, depending on a 15-minute break. I don't know. Whatever he needs to mentally repair himself. Next pick, Arizona Cardinals. This one we've kind of gone back and forth because you mocked Shamar Stewart there.
Yeah, projection guy.
I have a big problem with Shamar.
I do too.
I think he can be very good, but
the lack of production.
When you've had 3 sacks in your last 2 years and you're regarded so highly, to me that's like later in the first round, definitely. But
someone might take a chance on him, though.
I just think the Cardinals are in the middle where I think their ownership wants to win now. I don't know why, but they want to win now. Shamar's not your guy.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
I don't think so. You got to pick someone else on defense because wide receiver, they're stacked. Which, please pass to Marvin Harrison Jr.
Thank you.
Please. I don't know why you didn't. Everyone is mad about that, but you got some good choices.
Yeah, I like what they have.
Derek Harmon out of Oregon. I don't think they need a safety. Michael Williams, who could go.
Yeah.
Jahdae Barron's actually a pick and go too, but they're all right. Yeah. What would you do?
It's a tough one here. Defensive back. I mean, you could look at Malachi Starks from Georgia. You could look at Jahdae Barron from Texas. I think they want an edge rusher. I think they want to get better on the defensive line under Jonathan Gannon. That's why I think Shamar would actually make some sense because it is a projection guy. I think Jonathan can get the best out of Jonathan Gannon, I should say. Not you.
I mean, I'm not a coach in that.
Yeah. So
maybe one.
It's a tough call.
Personally, if I'm their ownership, I want someone a little more established.
I want someone who can come in right now and help you.
And Michael Williams or Harmon would be the better option.
I'd go Michael.
You go Michael?
Yeah.
I'll go Michael.
Someone who had kind of like Shamar, someone who had inconsistent production last year at Georgia. Someone who I thought, if he was more productive, we'd be talking about him as a top 10 pick. He actually maybe could go in the top 10, although I think it's highly unlikely.
But he's at least more productive, more set than Shamar.
But I like that pick for Arizona. Makes a lot of sense.
Which then, in turn, kind of screws over the Bengals because the edge position is one they can't play with because they literally have to go defense. Safety, they're established there. They got battle. They're fine. Corner is definitely something they might want to worry about because their corner group is not the best. I know some of their players, they said they had down years, but that group was terrible. There's one clip where 5 of them bobble 1 interception and lose the game basically because of it. So Jahdae Barron might be a guy who can go there.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
I think edge is definitely, but again,
do they take a risk though?
I don't. And
I don't know.
Because if you had Hendrickson, if you had him for 4 years,
that's the question there.
Then you could go that. But since it's not established yet, I don't think you can.
It's a tough call here. I think they would have loved Michael. I had that in my mock draft, so I didn't have to worry about this issue too much.
Well, honestly, they don't need wide receiver. We know they don't.
Imagine if they did. Take one.
I
think they just paid what? How much?
2 of them.
Jabbar and T?
A lot.
Yeah.
A lot. But no, you're not going wide receiver. Tight end, you're fine with. You just got Gesicki back. Harmon could be. I think it's mostly between Harmon and Jahdae at that point.
Or Starks.
Starks could be a good option there, but they got. This one's actually hard because Williams isn't there because we've said Williams there.
No, Jahdae Barron really stood out on tape for me. Him and Jahad Campbell.
Oh, Jahdae Barron, yeah.
You can maybe even throw Jahad in there, although he's someone who's got the medical concerns.
Yeah.
He might fall a little bit. Jahdae, that's what I would go with. This is another one against Georgia in the Week 8 game. I mentioned Georgia Tech.
We will go Jahdae.
Yeah, I mean, he had 2 interceptions. He also had an interception in the SEC championship game against the Georgia Bulldogs as well. Someone who I really liked on tape. someone who they got to go defense Cincinnati. I think it's a pick that would make a lot of sense. I think they love Mrykalo here because I think they prefer an edge rusher who can actually be productive right away.
Yeah.
But I like Barron.
Yes, I like Barron too. I think that's a position of need.
Yeah.
Honestly, like I said, that clip was honestly terrible. But next pick, Seattle Seahawks at 18. This one's very interesting.
Yeah, I was gonna say
because I think there's a lot of positions like I think they have a lot of good people in positions, but they don't have depth. But
Yeah.
I think line could be something like
I was leaning towards the line. I had Tyler Booker in my mock draft.
I think Tyler Booker's the best pick there.
Guard out of Alabama, someone who did not have a very good combine, but he's great in the run game.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean. Seattle, they have Kenneth Walker. They still want to run the football. Take care of Sam Darnold, your new quarterback who you acquired in the offseason.
Sam Darnold fan right here.
Yeah. And he's growing on me as well.
Yeah.
But we'll see if Sam is a one-year wonder. I mean, I hope he is. I don't think he will. I think
he'll be all right.
Seattle's been a consistent winner the last 3 years. And I think he is walking into a pretty good situation. The NFC West, there's a lot of questions about what they could be next year, even with a team like the Rams, who we're both very high on.
Yeah.
But, Matthew, we'll get to the Rams
later.
Their
defensive line is.
Yeah. Matthew Stafford, 37 years old. He stayed healthy last year, but he's had some injury issues.
Yeah.
So, curious to see how that plays out. And Seattle they were tied with the Rams in the division standings. They came very close to winning the division. Probably should have, actually.
They got very unlucky.
Yeah. So I think, look, you want to make sure you made the right choice with Sam Darnold. You got to protect them. I thought they could have taken an offensive line in the first round the last 2 years. They went in a different direction. Not the end of the world. I think here, 18 with Booker. I think if Banks is here, they would take him.
Oh, Banks here taking 100%. Yeah. He should not fall past you. But this next one, I think this is one we've kind of settled on, which the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, we think linebacker. They got a good D-line. They're okay around the safety and the corners, defensive backs. Offense, once everyone's healthy, Mike Evans, like he's a certified.
Absolutely. Yeah, they got to go defense here. Big year for Todd Bowles as well. Yeah. Tampa Bay, I think we're in agreement that they are the favorites to win the NFC South next year.
Still
the amazing NFC South division.
Baker with the most fumbles and interceptions.
Yeah, the great NFC South.
And somehow they still win.
Overtaken the NFC East, apparently.
So electric.
But, yeah, Tampa Bay, they have a great offense. The offensive line, it's still working.
It's working.
Graham Barn, they did well with that. Yeah. They got to go defense here. There's a couple options. Jihad, I think, makes a lot of sense.
I think.
Do-it-all linebacker. Someone who I mentioned, though, could fall a little bit. He had a torn labrum. He got surgery on that after the combine. Someone who could maybe even fall in the 30s, which could happen. We'll see. I mean, he could even go higher than that. But I do have a little concern about the medical. I think teams might as well. Yeah. I think Tampa, though, at 19, this would be a really good pick for them.
I think we've kind of settled on Jihad. Like we said, injury, but they're a team where mostly they have it pretty well figured out. Just linebacker, they just have older players that need to be starting to get phased out. So Jihad Campbell, give him a year, get him up to speed, and he'll be great.
But a big year though for Tampa's defense. Bulls. They got it. They really need to hit on this pick. I feel like.
Yeah. Next one.
This could actually be a Shamar Stewart.
It could be. Because they're edge. Denver. Yeah, they're edge.
Because with Denver,
they're a good team already.
Yeah, this is a team, one of the best defenses in the league. Shamar, he's not gonna have to be the guy right away.
Yeah.
So, or at least the most productive guy in his rookie year. That's a pick that I think would make a lot of sense. I also look at getting weapons for Bo Nix. Had an amazing rookie season last year with the Denver Broncos. Finally, they figured out the quarterback situation.
I know. Which, if you look at I think the second episode I ever did, you can see me say that he was just going to be another mid quarterback at Denver, and I was wrong. So I'm happy I was wrong. Great for him, but wow, was I wrong?
Yeah. So he was my quarterback 6. Well, I thought he was going to be a good quarterback. I compare him to Derek Carr. Someone who solid quarterback, but may not win you. Maybe he'll win you a couple of postseason games at best in his career. I'm not talking about Carr. I'm talking about Bo as well. Yeah. But I really like the fit with Sean Payton. I think Omarion Hampton, if he does fall, which I did have in my mock draft, I don't think he is going to fall. If he's there though, pick I would really like. Colson Loveland as well. Tight end. Yes, they did sign Evan Ingram in free agency, but he's not going to be there. I mean, he signed a 2-year contract. So he's not going to be the long-term guy in Denver. Matthew Golden as well. He's still on the board at 20. Fits a need at wide receiver. They do have some options here. Yeah. What would you do? Or we do?
Personally, I think tight end is something I could go for.
Evan Ingram.
Evan Ingram's not bad, but there's a reason he was released, and I think that's something you should look at. Loveland is a great prospect, and if he gets past him, he's going to go to the Chargers, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I think Michigan guy, he'll work great in the Harbaugh system. Of course, he knows him personally, so Shamar could be a good pick there because they have a good enough team where they can get him into it pretty quickly. But also a weapon thing could be pretty good. So personally, I think it's between Loveland and Shamar.
Well, this is a tough one here.
I mean, Golden could go there.
Golden could.
He could, but
this is a tough one.
Yeah, this one.
How far is Shamar gonna fall though? That's the question.
I think
someone's gonna take a shot on it.
Mid-20s is definitely somewhere to go, but I think Broncos that could be the team that takes a shot on him.
I was thinking that the other day. Yeah, I would do that.
We're gonna go Shamar to the Broncos.
And again, Evan Ingram with them. If they didn't sign Ingram, I think Loveland would have been a great selection here, and he could still be the pick. But Shamar, even though we're not very high on Shamar Stewart, the lack of production, that really concerns me. Even though this is a guy who I think's got as much upside as any defensive lineman in this draft, despite the lack of production. Freaky athlete, I think, for Denver, as I touched on. He does not need to be the hero on their defense because they were so good last year on defense.
I think they just struggled against the Bills a little bit, which I mean the Bills have a really good offense.
And they did some work on their defense in the offseason.
So they got some San Francisco's defense basically, but I think that's a great pick for them. Next pick I already pretty much have loaded up. I don't think they should go anywhere but quarterback because they lost their chance on Russ. They lost their chance on Field.
The whole mess now.
They lost their chance on basically everyone, and they haven't even signed Rodgers yet, and we're this close to the draft. If they would have wanted him, I think they would have gotten him already.
And they could still get him.
Oh, they could still get him, but
he's not the long-term guy anyway.
He's like 1 or 2 years.
Yeah.
Being honest. And I've seen some Pittsburgh fans not happy with this pick, but
I think it's a good pick here.
It's an okay pick. We're going to go Jackson Dart. We've been saying this since,
quarterback 3.
Yeah, he's pretty much the pick there. I don't see anyone else.
I think whether it's Pittsburgh at 21, the Saints at 9, the Giants at 3, I don't think that's gonna happen. If that happens, we might end the stream.
Yeah, I might.
I apologize in advance.
I might end
to happen. So he could go 9. He can go 21. I think either way he's gonna go in the first round because we mentioned Browns, Giants, a couple of teams that might trade into the first round to get their franchise quarterbacks. We know with the Browns, Deshaun Watson's not the guy. No. We figured that out pretty easily. Yeah. The Giants, maybe could take him in the first round, trading up, but as well as Shedeur. But we mentioned they signed 2 veteran quarterbacks in the offseason with Jameis Winston and Russell Wilson. So whether it's a trade up in the first round, which we haven't had in a while, the last time I think a team trade up in the first round for a quarterback was 2018. That was when the Ravens moved in. They were like mid-second round. They went up to 32, took Lamar Jackson. Great pick there.
What a hit.
So I think that could happen, but I think if Dart's there at 21 for the taking for Pittsburgh, that's a really good situation. And they also signed Mason Rudolph in the offseason. Guy who knows the offense very well.
And he knows how to take a helmet to the head.
Yes, he does. And even though the Steelers, they are trying to win games next year, they could start Rudolph week 1, kind of let Dart ease into the transition a little bit, not have to throw him in the fray right away. Even though the Steelers, they acquired DK Metcalf in a trade.
That was very good. Yeah. They have a good wide receiver situation. It's just
they have the weapons. Freiermuth.
If they don't crash out, that's the biggest problem.
Calvin Austin looked good.
Yeah, he's not bad. Next pick, we've pretty much already decided this. We said if you fell Colson Loveland, it just makes too much sense. He's got connections there. They are looking for a tight end that works in their system. So I think that's a perfect pick. We don't got to talk too much about that one. Green Bay. I think their defensive line has a lot of guys that are up and coming, so I think that's fine. Corner is a situation I think they need to work on, which could be a.
Do they take a chance on Savone Rebel?
Savone Rebel is one of my favorite players. I talk about him probably way too much and probably annoy him a lot.
No, I like the guy a lot.
But I like him a lot.
He's got the medical concern.
The medical, almost everyone in this draft does really.
There's a lot of red flags in this draft, folks.
They could go wide receiver.
They could, but historically they do not do that.
They don't do it well, and they don't really do it, but they have injuries there.
Yeah.
They have everything else pretty much covered. Alexander, he's still there. I don't know how much longer, but he's still good enough to be there.
Malachi Stark's still on the board.
Oh, I did not realize that. Oh, I know where he's going. He'll be next pick.
Yeah. Although Eamon Worry,
that
could be a pick.
I think Starks is just a little better.
Yeah, I do too.
I think they could go Golden here. Honestly, I think wide receiver is such a. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's a pick that fits a need. They don't have a true wide receiver one.
Yeah.
They didn't go out and get anyone in the offseason because historically they also don't do that either, the Green Bay Packers. I keep forgetting Green Bay is hosting the draft this year.
Yeah,
I forget to mention that.
I think like this draft is going to be actually a lot different than normal
Yeah.
drafts. I feel like it's just such a weird draft that teams are going to
Yeah.
actually go out of the way.
Go
I
off
think
the reservation a little bit.
I think these guys are like the Packers are actually going to change it because it's something they cannot
Yeah.
push off
So
anymore.
we're gonna go Golden here.
I think Golden,
Yeah.
unless they're
This is the right range for him, by the way. I know we've touched on Dallas at 12, possibly.
Big Booker and
Nah, I
just
wouldn't
the
go
burden's
that route.
falling to the second.
Yeah, I want to go that route. But Matthew Golden, though,
Yeah.
real quickly, someone who could go as high as 12 to Dallas, I would not love that pick, honestly.
Yeah.
I know it's a good compliment to see him win, but 20s, this is the right range for him. I mean,
Yeah.
you got Denver who could take him at 20. The Chargers at 22 could take him. Green Bay, we have going here 23. Houston 25. Rams 26. Commanders 29. Like, there's a lot of possibilities where he can go in the 20s. So I think here 23, it's the right range for him, I feel like.
Yeah. This one we've kind of talked. Okay, it's between Starks and MORI, but MORI is more he's good, but he needs that little extra push, and he's an athletic, like phenom. But Starks is just he's already established.
I'd be if they get
after losing with Byron, like they need to just
Harrison Smith, he's gonna be retiring. So
Starks is just a really good.
They get him at 24. That'd be a nice pick there.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a fall, but it's just how the draft worked out for us. This one, I think line is like they got to go line.
Yeah.
There you've got a few picks. You got Simmons, you got Zabel. Zabel, I think we've talked. He's more of a guy you can kind of mold to whatever position you want. So that's good.
Position flexibility
because they've lost some guys.
It's either got to be offensive line or wide receiver. Either got to be wide receiver or offensive line for Houston. You just mentioned trade Laramie Tunsil to the Washington Commanders.
Yes, sir.
Great trade there.
Yeah.
You got to do everything possible to help get CJ Stroud more weapons. He did take a bit of a step back last season after his amazing rookie season.
Yeah.
Yes, they did win a playoff game last year, and they had all those injuries. Their defense is already very good under D'Amico Ryans. For me, it's got to be either offensive line, wide receiver. If Golden's on the board, and don't forget, he was a Houston transfer. I forgot to mention that.
Yeah.
So that's a pick that would make a lot of sense. But at the end of the day, I think the offensive line, they got shredded numerous times.
Oh my gosh, that last playoff game against the Chiefs was like,
that was bad.
Stroud got hurt at the end.
He did get hurt
because the line couldn't protect him.
Yeah, so. I like Simmons here.
Either Simmons or Zabel, but I think Simmons if he's there. I mean, that's absolutely his perfect spot to do. So we'll go that. Rams.
It's an interesting one.
I think defense.
Yeah.
I think corner could be a spot because their corner group isn't. I mean, actually, they did sign Benjamin St. Juice, so that's a terrible spot. Wait, no, the Chargers did. My bad.
Yeah.
Chargers. They got Emmanuel Forbes. I get them mixed up because they're both that bad.
There you go.
Yeah, that's not a guy you want there. Sorry. But I think corner could be a spot where maybe they
go
could
offensive line as well.
Offensive line, yeah. Linebacker.
Can't help but think about how that ended that playoff game against the Eagles.
Yeah.
I know the Eagles have one of the best defensive lines in the league, but
they also have a running back like a fumbling issue, so they could try to go for.
Yeah, they're not.
I don't.
They're going to wait.
Running back, yeah, that's second round. Henderson is straight second.
Yeah.
So,
it's a tough one here.
You could go.
Their defensive line's already stout.
Oh, I don't know why they say they need an edge. Their defensive line is awesome.
They just took Verse last year.
I know. Zabel wouldn't be terrible.
Yeah. I was thinking that.
Yeah, Zabel could work.
Yeah,
I think Zabel's a good pick.
The position flexibility guy coming out of North Dakota State. He's going to go in the first round. He might even go to another team in the NFC West with the Seattle Seahawks picking at 18. We touched on they need help at the offensive line, protecting Sam Darnold. That would be a really good pick for them. I think it could happen, but I think Zabel here at 26. I think I had Josh Simmons going 20. Yeah, I think I had him going 26 here in my mock drafts, and that I think would be a pick they would consider as well, but he's off the board here. Yeah. So I'd look at Ray Zabel here.
Next pick would be Ravens. Ravens are a very good team. I don't think they have to worry about offensive line.
Super Bowl favorites right now in the AFC, whether you agree with it or not.
The Chiefs being
their odds
down. They don't need offense. Corner maybe. Edge. They're looking okay.
I like Eamon Warrior.
Yeah, Eamon Warrior. Yeah, I think that'd be a good addition there. I think him.
Wow.
People are getting knocked out. That's all I'm saying.
I like that pick.
Yeah, me too. Just a great guy. Like we said, physical phenom. Like he's insane. His numbers are insane.
Yep.
Lions.
They can go I mean, they did lose Kevin Zeitler in free agency. I mean, if Zabel's on the board, that's a pick to consider.
That's a pick, but
they got to go defense though.
Yeah, they've got a lot of people injured, and a lot of guys just took
some good options on the board. Kenneth Grant's still on the board as well. Michigan guy.
That's
Where's
true.
he on our list?
Yeah, where is he?
Did he fall? Oh my God, he's 38 on the...
8. That could be someone you go with.
What site is this, by the way?
This is Pro Football Insights Network. Just one with the least amount of ads. Next, I mean, Derek Harmon's there. He's kind of
some good options at the
Walter Nolan.
Yeah.
I mean, we could go Michigan because that's
James Pierce still on the board.
James Pierce, yeah, that's a guy who's fallen pretty hard.
Character.
Yeah. Ezraku's there, but I don't know edge.
Ezraku could. He's still on the board.
I don't know where he's going if he's still there. But I think Harmon or Nolan probably the best two options. I know the connections there with Michigan down here, which we can't go Kenneth.
Yeah.
But I think these two are just a little bit better. Harmon's fallen pretty.
He's got 18th on the board.
Yeah.
This is a tough one here.
Mm-hmm.
Some good options.
Oh yeah, very good options.
I would probably say I go Harmon.
You go Harmon.
I do it. Yeah.
I think just the position he's fall. Next one, I'll take the reins. As the Commanders fan, my biggest thing is I would love to get people I like in the draft, but sometimes you don't always get what you want. You get what you need, and what we need is edge. Because, like I said, offseason we did great at getting run stoppers, but what did we lose in the process? Any quarterback rushers, any sack people, any pass rushers, gone. So you could go Pierce.
Yeah.
But Ezraku, a little lower on this board. Scoring's there, but Ezraku is just...
I'm surprised by Ezraku that low. 37?
He's just a beast.
Yeah, 16 and a half sacks out of Boston College. Had a great year in 2024. Highly productive. Those are the kind of guys we like. I like him a lot. He's one of your favorite players.
Great character.
Yep, I love that.
With the Commanders, from our history, at this point right now, I don't want to take people that kind of have maybe some small character issues. We're not going to say if someone has it, like go into detail with it. But James Pierce, we know he's got some kind of...
Yeah, although if Washington does go with Pierce, at least they do have, I feel like, a good enough culture in place under Dan Quinn to help them out.
Dan Quinn can really fix anyone, but Ezraku just seems like a guy who's great for locker room and just everything. So Ezraku is my pick there. You could go Pierce, but I think he's pretty good anyway.
Yeah. I don't know why he's that low on this board.
Either, but
this is not our board.
This is not our board. We promise you that. Next one, Bills. Bills are interesting because
I go defense.
I go defense too because Von Miller's gone. They released him, correct? So that could be someone you kind of look at. I think their line is just like their offensive line, pretty good. Defensive line, step down.
Yeah.
Which also corner could be a question mark there. Safety.
Yeah, the two safeties are off the board.
Yeah, so I think line is their best.
Yeah, I look at Walter Nolan here.
Walter Nolan, I agree.
Out of Ole Miss, the A&M transfer, had 6.5 sacks this past year with the Rebels. Another guy who I like a lot. I think it'd be a really good pick for them. Buffalo's defense last year took a step back under Sean McDermott. As great as Josh Allen and that Buffalo offense was, which did better than I think a lot of people thought with the Stephon Diggs departure last offseason, I think getting Nolan here at 30 makes a lot of sense.
Eagles are going to do it again. Kansas City, this is a team where you can look around and there's a lot of things. Wide receiver, honestly, is a thing I think they could look at.
I look at offensive line.
And offensive line as well, yeah. One guy you can kind of look at, Emeka Ugboku, and honestly, Luther Burden. I know
Missouri guy,
around, but he kind of looks like he could be good there. I mean, of course, you have Worthy. He's fast. Maybe you want a guy who can
they have invested quite a bit in wide receiver in previous drafts. They took obviously Xavier Worthy 28th overall last year. They took Rashee Rice in the second round 2 years ago. So they have invested quite a bit in wide receiver. I can't help but think about that Super Bowl though. Patrick Mahomes running for his life. I think about that. Josh Connerly, tackle out of Oregon, someone who held up. Go watch his Big Ten championship tape, folks. Not only did he not give up a sack, he didn't even give up a hurry against Abdul Carter. Someone who it makes a lot of sense here.
Conley would be a great pick there.
I had this in my mock draft.
Yeah. Honestly, I like Conley there a lot. I think that's a great pick. But like I said, Eagles, they just have great picks on the board. You got Scoring, you got Emeka, you have James Pierce, Burden, Williams, and then
Kenneth Grant.
Yeah, Kenneth Grant. He's also a good one. I don't know how they do it. I don't know how he always gets lucky, but I like how they say edge.
Yeah.
Like they say edge. They got good at corner. I don't think they really need to pick anyone up, which
Yeah.
Savone would work well there, I think. But
Imagine if he went there.
I'd rather have him go to the Giants in the second.
Yeah.
Um,
I think you look at Pierce.
I was gonna say there's one guy you're kind of staring at
Yeah.
who's a great addition there.
This is someone who could have gone like people were going into the year. We're talking about him as the number 1 overall pick in the draft, or at least a high pick.
But the character,
the character stuff, that question, that's a big question mark.
Like we've talked about earlier, they've picked some guys with some characters.
Jalen Carter,
like Jalen Carter, there was that. It was the accent correct, and they were like, people like the Bears passed on him.
Watkins
goes here, turns into a stud.
Yep.
He's another one of those guys where name value goes a long way. Like anytime I hear the Eagles, I mean, I'm mostly scared of everyone on their team because the Commanders fan you get more scared. But
so you get used to
Carter, and then you're just like, oh, it's going to be a sack. There's going to be at least 5 sacks, especially if you have Carson Wentz. I don't want to go there. That was rough. That was a rough year.
Or Emmanuel Forbes.
Or
you mentioned earlier players that you want in the draft. You're banging the table for Christian Gonzalez.
Oh,
he falls all the way to 16. And they take a guy who I didn't even have going in my 2023 first round mock with.
That's a draft nightmare. That's not that was I think almost everyone graded an F because it was an F pick. But Rivera, love you, but we're gonna move on from that. But I think
apologies for bringing that up, by the way.
Yeah, you're fine. I'm just gonna cry myself to sleep tonight. But James Pierce, I think that's your option there.
And someone who I mentioned could have been a top pick in the draft this year. Still had a solid year. He had 7.5 sacks, but a bit of a drop off. He had 9.5 in 2023. Someone who had a good year, but we mentioned the character concerns. Big question mark there.
I think.
But we mentioned with Philadelphia, the culture that's in place.
If there's another team that can fix someone, it is the Eagles. Which I mean like fix in a bad way. Just like I think the year was just maybe rough on him.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you go to a team where literally your defensive line, it's going to be a group of guys that like you don't have to be the star player yet. You can just go in there, learn from all of them, and just be a beast.
Yeah.
And like I said, Eagles do it again. But that's our mock draft. I think we did pretty good. There's maybe some picks where people might disagree a little bit, but that's every mock draft. This is my first one.
Yeah, you're a rookie.
Yeah, I'm a rookie with it.
6 years.
Yeah, so this is my first one. This is his first one together, which we kind of became a package deal now that we're like in college and we're gonna start doing a lot of stuff together. So
get a mock draft.
Be ready to see our faces together for the next 4 years and maybe more, depending on how stuff goes. But
and next week.
And next week for the draft stream. Remember that.
4 hours.
Yeah, it's gonna be a while, and we might walk off set a few times or throw something, but don't be worried.
As long as we don't lose our picks, or as long as we don't lose our voices by like pick 10 or something like that, I think we can make it through the night.
Yeah, but like I said, thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked it, leave a like. Leave a comment if you think something needs to be changed. Like we totally messed up on a pick. Like you think, oh my gosh, how does Shamar Stewart go to the Broncos? Let us know what we did wrong. There's probably going to be a few people who say we're really stupid for a pick. But
my YouTube debut, guys.
Yeah, and YouTube debut. But yeah, I will see you guys in the next episode. Will probably be Friday for the NBA playoff predictions because I didn't do play-in because play-ins just doesn't interest me as much. I think so.
Although Grizzlies Warriors last night,
I don't want to talk about it.
Me neither. I want the Wizards to get the first round pick.
Okay.
Memphis, please win the game on Friday.
I'll see you guys in the next video. This has been Jonathan Mrykalo with my guest,
Jonah Mrykalo.
And bye.